This presentation is an overview of the OneStory editor, a collaboration tool for OneStory project documentation. One of the fundamentals of the editor is that each of the team members that are involved in the project have different logins with different roles. So for example, there's a crafting team, which includes a project facilitator, crafters who craft the story, and UNS stands for uninitiated native speaker. These are the people that the project facilitator will use for testing the story to make sure that it's reproducible and natural. And that team is often on the field in the language area. Then there'll be a consultant associated with each project as well, either an independent consultant or a consultant in training. If it's a consultant in training, there'll also be a coach who is mentoring the consultant in training as he or she mentors the project facilitator. Each of these different members have a different login, and the OneStory editor will either allow or prevent them from editing stories when it's not in their turn. The other fundamental to understand about the editor is that each story goes through a variety of states in which only one of the team members at a time can edit the story, and this is done primarily to prevent merge conflicts. So while a given story is in the project facilitator's turn, then the consultant can't make changes to it, and while it's in the consultant's turn, then it prevents the project facilitator from making any changes so that they don't end up stepping on each other. This is an example of the life cycle of a given story in the editor. First of all, the crafter will craft the story, and then the project facilitator will do some initial testing. And actually this part of it is done in an oral manner so that it won't even have been put into the editor until the initial tests are finished and the project facilitator is satisfied that it's ready to be checked by the consultant. When they feel that it is ready, they will type in the transcription of the story, the back translations, and add anchors, that's scripture references that support the different lines of the story. And that documentation will then be transferred over the internet to an internet repository, and an email will be sent to the consultant indicating that that particular story is in their turn now and is ready to be checked. The consultant then would synchronize with the internet repository so that he or she can see the changes and then add their feedback to the consultant notes for the story so that they can send it back to the project facilitator for revision. And that back and forth for revision can happen several times, particularly at the beginning of a project when the project facilitator is just learning the process. And each time that the project facilitator makes changes, they'll update the documentation and put it back into the consultant's turn for a further check. And then when the consultant is satisfied that the story is exegetically sound, they'll send it back for some formal testing. That would include a retelling and inference testing questions. And the results of those tests would be typed into the editor as well and forwarded back to the consultant for a further check. And again, this can lead to further revision of the story and further back and forth between the project facilitator and the consultant. Eventually, though, the consultant will be satisfied that it's ready to begin being used in story fellowship groups, and they'll put it in what's called preliminary approval stage. It'll be used with a group of people, and oftentimes that leads to changes due to using it with a group of people. And then once it's finally approved, it's ready to be used regularly in story fellowship groups. This image shows the user interface of the OneStory editor. As you can see, it's quite busy. This is the kind of view that normally a consultant or a coach would be seeing, and they generally want to see sort of everything at once. So that's why it's as busy as it is. But the good news is that the OneStory editor was also designed with just-in-time views, and so it only presents those fields that are needed when they're needed, and so it's a little bit simplified for when project facilitators are first entering data in a new story. So for example, when a new project is created, the very only task that's available is to add a story. If the project facilitator clicks the tasks link, then the task window comes up with different buttons of different things that can be done. In this case, the only thing is to add a story. If they click that, then this line 1 will show up with an editable box for the vernacular transcription of the story. And generally, the project facilitator would type in the entire story in this single box, and then there's a way through the user interface to have it split into lines based on punctuation. Eventually, though, if they click the tasks link again, you can see now there's a lot more options. They could enter in national language or regional language back translation, an English back translation, adding anchors. And what these different buttons would do would be to enable various other fields to be displayed when they're needed. So for example, this is what a story would look like after the transcription of the vernacular had been typed in and had been split into lines. And then if they go to the next state, which would be entering the English back translation, these extra boxes would appear for them to enter in the English back translation associated with each line of the vernacular. The data that's kept in a OneStory project, each project would have one or more stories, and each story has a number of lines to it. For each line, there's also a vernacular transcription, up to 2 possible back translations and a free translation. In the diagram, you can see how these are shown in the editor. This would be the vernacular transcription, this is the national language back translation, and this would be the English back translation. Anchors are also are stored in the project, and these are displayed in the editor in a line just beneath that with these buttons that represent the different scripture verses that support the line from the story. These buttons can be clicked on to cause the Bible pane here to jump to those references. For each line, we also keep track of one or more inference testing questions. These are shown here. And the results from the test. So that would include retellings and answers to the testing questions. And here's where the retellings would be displayed, and here's where the answers to that testing question are displayed. And then, of course, there's consultant and coach notes. These are done on the right-hand side. And you can see that each of these are tied to a particular line. So each line can have 0 or more consultant notes. And then you can see this was a comment from the CIT, consultant in training, to the project facilitator. And here's the response from the project facilitator. In the coach notes pane, you can see a comment from the coach. And here's a response from the CIT. Of course, the real benefit of the OneStory editor for collaboration is the ability to synchronize the changes made by each team member so that all the other team members can get changes done by the other team members with the minimal of effort on their part. The Chorus plugin knows how to merge the data files from each user so that the data can be transferred between them without having to have complicated emails and transferring files manually and things like that. The Bible references that are used, this is the Bible pane. Happens to be the Net Bible. These are used for the anchoring. So you click on one of these buttons and you can drag and drop them onto the button line and the anchor line. This happens to be the Net Bible. This Bible and the commentaries are also Sword Project resources. It's an open source provider of biblical resources. The installer for OneStory Editor comes with the Net Bible and the Matthew Henry Complete Commentary on the whole Bible. But if you have other Sword Project resources from different websites, you can download them into your machine and they'll automatically become available to the OneStory Editor. And I know people that use the Hindi Bibles and Indonesian Bibles and French Bibles and Spanish Bibles. The OneStory Editor user interface can be localized. Currently we have localizations in Indonesian, Portuguese, Spanish, and French. And that's the OneStory Editor. If you have any questions or want some more information, please contact me at bob_eaton@sal.com. Thanks.